We have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat. Period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck.
I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you are on the lifeboat. You know what, people? Every once in a while, just want to grab Mark by the throat. No, I'm kidding. This is it's good to be back, people. Last night's show was a little short. This one's not going to be. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties getting rolling. I think the majority of things going on these days has got a lot to do with a much higher quality video. You guys occasionally will say some stuff about buffering, or you'll notice some things that look a little bit different. Some of that is because we're chewing up a whole lot of computer wizardry with the quality of the new camera that we're working with. Between that and the audio and all that, this is pushing the system. It really is. But it is a better product, and the better the product, the farther they push it. And that's really what it's all about, because we want to reach as many people as we can with the lifeboat. So the beautiful thing, people, is that I want to thank everybody for respecting the lifeboat. I want to thank everybody for just being the crew that we know you are, because everybody just seems to have taken last night in its intended spirit. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it, other than to thank those that have respected our wishes, and to thank all of the people that don't have a clue what I was talking about, but had to put up with it anyway. Mark and I, from time to time, have to do things, and sometimes it leaves the audience bewildered, right? There'll be a few people on the crew that need to hear what we're saying, and the rest of them are going, what the hell are they talking about? But I do appreciate those who reached out to us and said exactly that. I have no idea what you're talking about, but we love you guys and that kind of thing. It really does mean an awful lot to us. It really, really does. There's sorry, my mustache is driving me crazy. There is just something about this crew that when everything is good, boy, it really is good, The moose is facing front. If that is the case, then this is completely squirrel, because I have gone nowhere near the moose all day. I was actually filming stuff for a different channel, and I was doing it in a different room. So I don't know what's up with the moose. That would have to be a squirrel thing. So tonight, people, if you look at the thumbnail, knowing when to move on and to do it in a healthy way. That may sound like it is a continuation of last night, and that really isn't the intent. I promise you it's not. Doesn't mean it's not great advice anyway, but it's really not where we're going. Well, the reason more often than not, the reason more often than not that we come up with a subject matter is because of emails that we get from you. Very often, the stuff that people are emailing us and talking about end up becoming a topic on the boat. And it's a recurring theme with people who are in recovery, that, and people in general, but we speak about people in recovery, but it's a recurring theme that we really tend to hold on to things a lot longer than we should. And if you think about this, it shouldn't really take you by surprise, right? We talk so often about how addiction puts the emergency brake on your emotional development. And in doing that, it leaves you upon your new journey into sobriety without all of the tools necessary to get through some things. And one of those things that we don't develop really well when we're addicts is learning how to move on. You see people all of the time that are holding on to stuff and dragging that stuff with them, and it's a plague. It really is. When you're trying to remain sober, this is a really bad thing to do, because we talk about creating a new person, becoming a new creature, becoming a better version of yourself. However you want to view it or look at it, you really are transforming. I really like to think of myself as a new creation, but whatever, it becomes semantics, whatever you want to call it. But when you start to transform yourself into somebody new, the last thing in the world you want to do is drag as much of the baggage that you can from the previous incarnation of you along for the new ride. I know people who are in, their second or third year of sobriety, and every single time we talk, they spend the first 15 minutes going into a diatribe about their ex-wife. And this is not one of those situations where they have children together. It's not like he has to interact with this woman. It's just that he can't seem to let go. He can't seem to put this in the past and move on with his life. And this can happen with massive, huge things like divorce, loss of a job, a death in the family, or a death of a friend. And it can also trickle down to the most petty and small things in the entire world. So oftentimes we end up holding a grudge against somebody, and it's the same situation where we quite simply can't let go. It becomes that pet thing that we carry around with us and go back and play with as often as possible. And in doing so, you're threatening your serenity. And as you know, people, anything that threatens your serenity threatens your sobriety. So the question becomes, how do you do it? And as so often is the case, it starts with the P word, right? Perspective. Often we blow things so out of proportion that we create monsters that haunt us, and we create issues out of thin air. The perfect example would be this gentleman that I'm talking about, who every time he speaks to me needs to tell me about just what a rotten piece of me that his ex is. And the other day when we were talking, by the way, this is not a member of the lifeboat, so I don't feel all that bad, sharing this, but he's not a member of the lifeboat. But when we were talking the other day, I said, "Can I ask you a question, man?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Do you think she's thinking about you right now? Honestly, do you think she's taking time every time she talks to her best friend to say, you know what a worthless, SOB my ex-husband is?" I said, "Because I'm willing to bet you she's not. And more importantly than talking about it, I'll bet she's not thinking about it either. I'll bet that there's nothing from that marriage that she spends a whole lot of time thinking about." Now, obviously, people, there's always going to be things that crawl into your head, right? We talked about this at length right after I had spoken to Alan about the flashbacks, those drug flashbacks where one moment you're cruising along and everything is great. And in the very next moment, you're, at a bus stop where, you were left your mother for 3 hours while you were out trying to get dope, or whatever the case may be. Those kind of flashbacks happen, and that's normal. It really is, especially with people in recovery. But if you're divorced, and, my first wife and I were together 13 years, something like that. So, and we had a couple of kids together. So obviously there are going to be times where, things from my past creep into my mind. I have been blessed in that I don't harbor any ill will toward this woman. I really don't. I wish I could say the same about my second wife, because I struggle with it. I'll be really honest. I struggle with it. And I could go off on a big diatribe right now. I could tell you how while I was incarcerated, she stole a ton of money from me. She filed all of the things that you could get from the government in my name. So when I got out of prison and they said, oh, you can get all of those benefits, even as someone leaving prison, all of that stimulus is yours. I was like, oh, that's great. What a jump start to life. And when I filed, they said, oh, no, you've already received those funds. She wasn't slick. She had them mailed to the address that we both used to live at. And I found myself in a very unique position because number one, obviously I was pretty torqued. But number two, I had a strange kind of power, right? If I wanted to, I could throw her in prison. I mean, this was a substantial amount of money. This is the kind of cash that could literally land you in prison. And it wasn't just stealing the checks. She went a little further and started to take out loans from a business that I used to run. So she was getting the benefits that they were doing for small businesses to keep them going during the C-19 crisis. And I remember sitting there and thinking, oh boy, right? I'm going to call the law. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get her incarcerated. But I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because I could hear Q, the guy that worked with me in the very beginning of my sobriety, talking about how you let things go. If you continue to hold on to things and drag things with you, then really, really bad stuff happens. And usually that bad stuff leads into a relapse, which leads into you using your chemical of choice. And for me, that means going back to prison, losing everything in life that I care about, and then all of the other things that go along with that. You know, there was no lifeboat at that time, but the memory of my dad and, you know, all of these things were really on my mind. Now, to protect myself, I absolutely told the government that, you know, I had my checks stolen from me, but I didn't press charges. I didn't go down that road. People, I gained freedom from my ex that day. And I still struggle with not liking the woman. I'm not going to lie to you. I wish I could get over that. I wish I could feel toward her like I do my first ex-wife, because I love her. You know, I pray for her every day, and I hope that life is good for her. The second one, I struggle with it, but I don't revisit it every single day. It's not something that I allow to dictate my emotions. I'm not going to allow this person that was once such a large part of my life to dictate everything that happens emotionally for me going forward. And the key, people, is always perspective. You know, start asking yourself, how big is this issue that I have turned into Mount Everest? And more often than not, you're going to realize that it's a 6-inch bump, you know, that you have managed to just feed and feed and feed. And the more you do it, the larger it grows. And it gets to a point where, honestly, you know, I know everyone has had that experience where you just can't stand somebody, and it goes on for so long that when someone says, you know, why do you hate that person? You go, well, there was this, he did that, I'll remember, but I can't stand them. I mean, honestly, it gets to the point where we create these things that are so huge that they dwarf whatever the real issue was. They eclipse it, and you find yourself sort of mired down in negative emotions. I promise you, people, hate isn't healthy. It just isn't. And, you know, we've done a lot of shows on forgiveness, and this is kind of something that dovetails into it, because very often the things that we're holding on to require us to forgive individuals in order that we can move on. Now, have I forgiven my wife for what she did, my ex-wife? Yeah, in my head, I think I kind of have. If you've been on the boat a really long time, you remember that in, I think it was September, I did a show where I talked about 2 people that I really had an issue with. And I was carrying around this, this hatred, you know, for these 2 people for a really long time. And there wasn't a couple of days in a row that would go by that I didn't spend a good chunk of time thinking about them. You know, one guy got me for some money, and the other person did something to someone in my family, basically misled somebody and took advantage of somebody in my family, and I couldn't move on. I mean, for the life of me, I couldn't move on. And I talked to some people on the boat. I was very, very open and told everybody what was going on. But what really jumped out at me was something that someone on the boat said, and I had heard it before. I'd read it. I'd read it in every self-help book I ever read, and I read a ton of them. But the thing when I heard it come out, from someone on the boat, and I started thinking about it, forgiveness isn't about the person you're forgiving. It's about you. It's not giving somebody freedom for whatever they did to you. It's giving yourself freedom from the emotional baggage that comes along with not forgiving somebody. Right now, I've talked about how, we're Italians. So in my family, you get really torqued and you scream at one another. And when you get really angry and you feel like someone has done you dirty, they say, hey, you know what? You're right. What I did was wrong. I really want to apologize. Well, as an Italian, you don't say, yeah, I forgive you, right? You can't say that just yet, because in our family, I forgive you means I am now giving up the right to ever bring this back up, right? The next good argument, I can't go, yeah, well, you did this, because once you say, I forgive you, it's gone. I'm not allowed to ever revisit this subject. So there were times in our family where somebody really upset you and they'd say, I really want you to forgive me. And you'd go, well, give me a little time. I really appreciate you apologizing to me, but you're going to give me a little bit of time because I might need to bring this back up. I might have to talk to you about this so that I get that dreaded, closure word, that has become so popular. But honestly, if you're not over it, well, then don't say, I forgive you. Because I forgive you means I'm over it. It means it's done, right? I'm going to get rid of it. This is the same concept, people. The reason I'm bringing this up is it's the exact same concept of moving on. Spend some time. If the issue that you're working on is eating at you so badly, as opposed to taking 6 to 10 minutes, 5 times a day for 5 years, sit down and take all the time you need. Right? I don't care if you sit and concentrate on it, spend 4 or 5 hours thinking about nothing else, but work through whatever is torquing you. Work through whatever is grinding your gears. Start with the perspective, right? Is this thing as big a deal as I'm making it out to be? Is this thing worth destroying a friendship? Is this thing worth destroying the love between me and a family member? Or whatever the case may be, because when you start asking yourself logical questions, it's astounding how fast you realize that, I'm a jackwagon. Honestly, like I'm going to destroy a relationship because, so-and-so didn't invite me to dinner where 4 other people were going over. My father had a friend when I was growing up, an Italian guy. His last name was Pisani. And my dad had gotten him a job and in the town that we lived in. He was from New York, and he decided he wanted to move back to the city. And a couple of weeks after he got back, he called my dad and said, I made such a mistake. You have no idea how miserable I am. I hate it here. I wish I had stayed in Vermont, blah, blah, blah. So my dad made a few phone calls and they were able to get the guy his job back. He worked at the local high school, and he came back and went to work. But my dad and he were just really close. And, he was so happy for what my dad did. But when my brother Johnny graduated from high school, Mr. Pisani decided to go to a different child's graduation party as opposed to Johnny's. And for probably 15 years, this was an issue where these two guys didn't talk over a party. And my dad got a call from him one day and said, hey, I really want to talk to you. Do you think you could come by? And my dad said, well, maybe, maybe later in the week or something like that. He said, well, I have terminal lung cancer and I'm not exactly sure how much longer I'm going to be here. And I really kind of want to see you. So my dad drove over to see him. It was on a Tuesday. And I remember my dad coming back and I said, how did it go? He said, I walked in the door and the first thing he said to me was, please don't waste the time I got left on this planet apologizing, or let's just forget all that and try to make up for 15 years that we weren't talking. And it's a perfect example of just how the smallest little insignificant chunk of crap. And my dad said to me, he said, even after he said that, I said to him, I'm an idiot. That little thing, I made such a huge deal over. But Often you got to be an idiot in order to learn. But if you can learn from other people's mistakes, you know what I mean? You're not smart. You're a freaking genius. So take the opportunity to get a really, really good idea of why you're so PO'd. Why are you so angry? Or why can you not let go? And I'll tell you, people, it gets more complex in some situations. We all know that. But if you were fired or if it was a divorce, look, I've been cheated on, right? Everybody has had that one situation where they had someone they were just in love with. And then you find out that they've been having an affair. And it's like getting hit in the stomach with an axe. But I'll tell you something. Getting hit in the stomach with an axe sucks, but getting hit in the stomach with an axe every day for 4 or 5 years is really awful. And it just has to be one of those things that you have to work your way through. And again, it always comes down to just asking yourself logical questions. And for me, it was, you know what, was I doing anything that could have caused this to happen? I mean, was the 7 grams of heroin a day I was doing maybe something that drove this girl into the arms of another guy? Wow, right? Now, in the beginning, it's just no. You go with the emotion. It's raw emotion. How dare she? You know, we loved each other. I was a thief. I was a thief, a liar, and a drug addict. I'm surprised that this girl cheated on me. I mean, when you start asking yourself logical questions and you start owning things, then you really get an appreciation for just how ridiculous most of the stuff that we create, these monstrous, just bigger than life dramas in our life. I think I told you last night, there was person on the boat that said to me, look, you know what? I vowed to not allow drama in my life. You want to learn how to move on? Vow not to have drama in your life. Because I promise you, people, just like happiness is a choice, drama is a choice. It is. And you say, well, yeah, but so-and-so did this. And you chose to react how? I don't care what they did. Honestly, I don't care. How did you choose to react? Because chances are nothing. Because your reaction took it to the next level. And you say, yeah, but then they did right. After you did this, then they made a crap decision. And between, say, 2 months, maybe 3 months of this going on, this gets built into something that is bigger than life. And the next thing you know, you're hurling insults and accusing everybody of, things just that make no sense, right? You were the shooter on the grassy knoll in Dealey Plaza. All of a sudden, something that just wasn't that big a deal gets blown out of proportion. You see these people that just get wrapped up in things. When I found out that my ex had stolen my money, I went and started playing like, I don't know, amateur detective. And I realized that there were a lot of stuff that passwords were never changed on. Like she didn't know I was not out of prison. So I started going through passwords. And one of the worst things that ever happened to me was I was able to look at, honestly, everything she had looked up, Googled, or done anything on a computer for the previous 2 years. You want to talk about a nightmare? Seriously, you want to talk about a nightmare? But I promise you something, that the Tommy you're listening to right now, I wouldn't look. I promise you. I wasn't that guy then. Because not only did I look, people, but I became Sherlock Holmes. Like I got so into this, it was absolutely ridiculous. I was looking through metadata from 3 years. You have any idea how long that can take? I spent weeks wasting my life, making myself angry, threatening my sobriety, right? All of these things. A choice I made. Did anything good come from it? Not a lick. I mean, not a lick. I know a whole lot more about what was going on. Am I better off for knowing that? Nah, I'm really not. Truthfully, I'm not. And it made the leaving this behind process much more difficult. I mean, if I could do it all over again, as soon as I saw that, I just would have gone in there, changed the password, and walked away. Sorry. Yeah, Michael Carbone makes a really great point. Drama begets more drama. There's no two ways about it. That is just how it works. And the really funny thing is, it takes the bigger human. either the bigger man or the bigger girl or whatever, however you want to look at it. But anytime this crap starts happening, especially between people who once cared for one another, someone has to become the better human and just say, you know what, I'm not doing this. You want to fire one more salvo at me? Go ahead. And I'm not firing back. So you're going to say this and you just do the, whatever, whatever. Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
I first time we've met YT, I think. I don't think I've seen YT in here before. If you've been here before, I apologize. But they say I'm recovering from a lot. I opened up to my fam and my boyfriend fam and told them they cannot be in my life, continuing their toxic behaviors. I was called crazy. It hurts, but I can only change myself.
Boy, first of all, it's really a difficult thing. The situation obviously is not something that you can make light of. It's very easy for someone to sit here and talk about, how to handle things. But when the emotional part is in it, and it's you that's in that, obviously it's a more difficult thing. But I don't know that I could have said this any better, even from, in front of the mic without having to deal with everything you're dealing with. In spite of everything you're dealing with, that's about as philosophical as you could possibly be, because you're absolutely right. And good eye, Mark, too, because this is just one of those comments that really kind of hammers this home in a real life situation. YT ends up in a situation that is just brutal, and we've all been there. You do something, and what's the first thing that happens, right? It goes to the name calling. And crazy is really a great one, isn't it? I mean, that's just one of those terms that is just, talk about escalating, talk about taking something to the next level. When you say to somebody, you're crazy, you've just, everything that you're saying, there's no validity to it. Your mind isn't even right. I mean, it's just one of those hurtful things that people say that is designed, right, to hurt people. It's a trigger word. And we had a lot of misunderstanding about the trigger words a long time ago here on the book. Doesn't mean you're going to go get high, right? There are different types of triggers. A trigger word is something that someone says with the absolute purpose of getting a reaction. They're not saying it for any other reason other than cruelty. They want to hurt your feelings. That word is triggering an emotion. That is why they said it. And calling you crazy just sucks. And it is a difficult situation, but YT, you nailed it, right? The only thing that you can work on is you. That's the only thing that you have any control in the situation on. And it sounds to me, and of course, I don't know the entire situation and I don't need to, but it sounds to me like you really have a handle on this, because that's it, people. I mean, one of the other key parts to the entire equation is so often we feel like we need to change someone's mind. We need to make someone see our point of view. We need to make them understand just how much that they've hurt us. We need to, doesn't matter. All of those things, they're just words that mean nothing, because the only person that you can make anything is you, right? You're not going to get them to see your side of it. You're not, especially once it's escalated to trigger words and name calling. When they call you crazy, YT knows better. And we all need to. Someone starts calling you crazy, someone starts throwing around words like that, then where's it going to go? It's going to become larger. It's going to become bigger. It's going to become uglier. Nothing productive is going to come out of that, not at any level. So what YT has done is basically what we were talking about. Start asking yourself questions. Start looking at perspective. And the conclusion you're going to come up with, if you're doing it right, then there's a bunch of them. But that's one that is just right, in the wheelhouse, right? That's the home run. I can't control these people, right? And I'm certainly not going to change their mind. The environment was already identified as toxic, right? How do you know when it's time to cut and run? How do you know when it's time to walk away? When something becomes toxic, and if you don't know the definition of toxic, well, you can look it up, or honestly, I don't believe there's a person here that doesn't know what a toxic situation or a toxic relationship is. When it starts to threaten your serenity, which obviously threatens your sobriety, then it has become toxic. When it is abusive for the sake of being abusive, if you hash something out, if Mark and I get angry at one another, and I say to him, hey, here's what my problem is, and my voice raises a little bit, he's going to get a little bit upset, but we're hashing through it. We're a couple of brothers talking about something and working it out. There might be some yelling, but I'm never going to call the guy stupid. I'm never going to do anything that is going to take this from a debate or an argument or anything else and take it into toxic. Once that situation starts with the name calling and starts with the threats, anything like that, if you have somebody that is manipulating you, right, they don't have to be saying anything, but if you have one of those people in your life who's manipulative, right, everything they do, they're doing because they expect a result out of you. And we've all been manipulated people. Everybody has been. I mean, from the really small stuff. I've got a neighbor, right, and hopefully that neighbor's not watching this show, but I have a neighbor that will occasionally call up and say, I've got something that at the house that needs a little fixing. Can you come over and help me? Sure. You know what I mean? That this is a person who's older than I am, and she's not great at fixing stuff, and they've seen me changing the floors out and doing all kinds of stuff. I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. But inevitably, people, when I get over to that house, there will be 6 things that need to be done. And it's always the first, hey, can you help me with this? And as I'm heading out the door, oh, you know what? And I'll go, sure, what else? What else can I help you with? And I know better, right? Every time I have a conversation with this person, I'm going to get manipulated into doing something. Small potatoes. It's no big deal. It really isn't. I would really prefer it if they just said to me, hey, I got about 5 things I need knocked out. They're really nice people, maybe bake me a thing of brownies. I'll come over to the house and do whatever you want. But from really small stuff like that to people who, when I was in the active addictive life, and I think I've said this before on the show, but I would start telling lies a month ahead of time. I kid you not. I always knew that a day was coming where I was going to need money for dope. So, I would start lying about something being wrong with my car when it wasn't. They'd say, hey, how you doing? Good. Something's up with the car, though. What the hell it is? Front end is shimmying, and I'm just manipulating, just being a stone cold dirtbag. And even though I had, $500 or $600 in my pocket and 4 grams left for the day, I was planning to be able to lie to this person down the road. And that kind of manipulation, when you realize that someone is telling you BS and they're doing it for the sake of getting something in return, right? Whether they want money or whether they want you to do this, or someone that plays on your emotions, someone that knows that if they just say the right thing, you're going to do whatever they want. People, if you're getting manipulated, it's toxic, right? That's not healthy in any way, shape, or form. And I'll be really honest. If the manipulation isn't caused by drugs or alcohol, right? Because most addicts are manipulative. They kind of have to be, right? But usually in that type of situation, if you can remove the catalyst, if you can get rid of the drugs and the alcohol, well, there's a really good chance that that person might change and become a far more healthy, kind of a human being. But if that person is stone cold sober and is manipulative and cheating and all of those things, I'd run like hell. I would run like hell. You have to know when to cut your losses. You have to get to a place where you're ready. When you know the time has come to move on, then you have to move on. Hold on one second, people. You know what I've done? I have let this thing get absolutely, every once in a while, especially like if Mark says, hey, you got to check this out. When I do, if I don't touch the screen, I will lose track.
Goes
of where I
into
am.
sleep
So I just
mode.
looked down and I thought,
Yeah.
no one has said anything in like 15 minutes. Boy, they must be enthralled. Unfortunately, toxic relationships that that you're tied to for the rest of your life leaves very little room for recover, moving on, etc. You're screwed. You know what, Vivian? Yes and no. Yes and no. There are toxic relationships that you're tied to for life. For instance, sons and daughters, right? Mothers and fathers, uncles, things like that. You are definitely tied to those people for life. How you choose to be tied to those people in life, though, there's latitude. right? There's always some abilities. And if you're in one of those toxic situations with family members or somebody that you're tied to for life, and you know what, if that person is, you're tied to them by marriage, I'm sorry, people, I'm not one that advocates, for people to divorce one another, but there are times where divorce is just necessary. I mean, let's be really honest. There are some unions that never should have happened. And in those cases, yeah, there are, very legitimate reasons to move on.
Kids
But
suffer,
if it's a situation that you're tied to that you absolutely can't get out of, then what you do is you set some guidelines and some boundaries to ensure that you protect yourself. And by protect yourself, if your serenity is getting jacked with, the next thing in line is your sobriety. So if somebody is doing something that is messing with your serenity, then you've got to put some barriers up and put some hard, fast rules in place. And I have had those conversations with people. People in my life that I wasn't going to be able to just cut loose, where I would say, you know what? It's right now at this phase of my life, my dealings with you make me want to use heroin. And with all due respect, nothing is going to make me want to do heroin if I have the control to make that stop. So until this clears up, we're just not going to talk. No hard feelings. I love you to death. But your interactions with me consistently make me want to go back to my drug of choice. And until that stops, right, then I'm just not going to be around. And to be really honest, the individual I had that talk with, they're not around. I haven't, it's not a situation where it got better. Maybe someday it will. But as of right now, that's a boundary that, and every once in a while, I still have to be around this individual. But when I am, I assure you, I also put some safeguards in place. There will always be more than just two of us there. I'm never just going to be me and that person. And I usually try to set the situation up in such a way where they're never going to corner me, or I have to spend a good deal of time talking to them. Right? For real. I can be social. I can walk in the door and go, hey, how you doing? Hope everything's going great. Hey, where are the chips? And then I'm just going to go and try to find a different place where I could do something else. The nice thing is there's usually some kids around. So I'm off. You want Uncle Tommy to do whatever? Let's go in the backyard. I'm going to not put myself into those situations, but it is difficult. And I know it's harder when you're tied to the toxic individual, but it's just about setting guidelines and
that's a great point though, Tommy. Sometimes avoidance is not running away from a problem. Avoidance is sometimes just what you have to do to stay where you're at, to stay sober. I hate to, say it in all those kinds of words, because we're taught from so many other people that, face your problem head on. Well, guess what? I am facing my problem head on. I'm just choosing it to take care of this problem by not putting myself into an existing problem. It's really that way, guys. Don't ever feel ashamed to go the other direction.
You want to hear a great comment?
Go for it.
Right along the lines of what you're talking about. This comment is from John Black. This is a winner. I love this. He said, if you learn to really love yourself, you will not allow toxic people to affect you. Also, you don't have to show up to every argument you're invited to. Yes, that is absolutely awesome. And it's right what Mark's talking about.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That is the point.
You can avoid those situations. It doesn't mean you're running away. It means I love myself too much, right? Honestly, I love myself. I'm not going to put myself into that situation. So you wanna do this argument thing? Thanks for the invite. I think I'll pass. John, I love that, man. I love that. I love how you worded that. That is awesome. That really is. That's good stuff.
I could share this too. When I was a child, my parents never hesitated to argue in front of me. Now, did it damage me? No. Okay. Just being honest, it didn't damage me. It wasn't like severe stuff, except for the one time the coffee table come flying across the room. But anyway, I'll skip that one. But my dad figured it out. You know what my dad figured out to do? Instead of engaging into the argument, he would just sit there and smile. And what he was doing, and he figured it out. He figured out what he needed to do to get the thing to stop. because my mom could not handle when he didn't respond the way she thought he should. So she would get so mad she would just walk away. He didn't walk away. He just found something that made that stop. It's the same as if we turn and walk away. It really is. But my point here is that there's multiple ways to handle situations like that. And like what Tommy said, sometimes you go to that person, you do your little cordial thing, and you just bolt. And it ain't saying you can't have a conversation with these people, but like what Tommy said, he had stuff set in place beforehand because he knows. If something blindsides you, I guess it's a little different, but that's a trigger. That's different from what we're talking about. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
No, the Trish Killian said, I bought into the lie that other people and their needs must come first, and they don't need to thank me. I don't have to just be belittling. You know what? You're not the only person that has bought into this, and this is a pitfall. We did a show on this. This is a pitfall, especially with people in sobriety, because forget all of you, right? I was such a dirtbag for so long that I really found myself with the inability to say no to just about anything. Like when I got sober and I was out and I was, I wanted the world to know I was this new guy. So if, hey, how you been? I hadn't seen you in a long time. Hey, could you swing by and mow my lawn? I'd be like, sure. When can I come by and do that? Like it really got to a point where I didn't say no to anybody for anything. I'm moving Thursday. Can you come and help me move? And I would move my schedule around. I would do whatever I had to do, call and cancel things so that I could be there, because for so long I was just the most unreliable guy in the world. And I don't know whether in the back of my head I thought maybe, if I don't do this, they're just going to figure I'm shooting dope in the basement or something, right? So, I don't know if that was one of the driving forces or if it was just the overwhelming guilt from my past, but I just could not say no. And for probably a year, I was just a doormat. It really was. And sometimes, I know I told the story because it was on the lifeboat, but, there was a guy that said, I'm building a deck. Is there any chance you could come and help me? I said, sure. Come by and give you a hand. I don't remember what it was, Mark. It was like 3 days or something. But I was putting in like 10 or 12 hours a day, for 2 or 3 days. And I would sprint home to do the lifeboat. And at the time we were doing 2 shows a day. So I would literally say to him, listen, I'll be back in an hour. And I would, come running home and I would bang out a 1-hour show. And then I would run back over there to help him continue working on his deck. And it's just one of those things that, we really do have to learn to set boundaries. And I know I have kind of, really far afield. Go ahead.
Well, no, honestly, though, I think you touched on something there that's really the catalyst to a lot of this is guilt. We kind of guilt ourselves into a lot of situations that we don't have to be in. The sooner you can get over that. Now, I'm not saying we don't need to make amends for what we've done, right?
Oh, no, yeah.
Because there's healing in that for both people. Now, when you start, tiptoeing into the guilt realm, that's when you start going down the depression track. That's when you start going down, you can't say no to nothing. I watched my dad do that as I was growing up, and I do think he was trying to make up for a lot of stuff he did when he was younger. And it was something that I watched, and Tommy hit on something actually quite a few minutes ago now. We got to learn from each other, right? And a person that can figure that out, the sooner the better. My dad, and I've said this before, and this is nothing against my dad. My dad just did not stay at a job longer than like a year or two. So what that did was it created, and he didn't realize it, I don't think he would have done it. It created a somewhat unstable environment for me, because we were always having to, change things this way or that way, financially, even up to moving once a year, that kind of thing. And a lot of military people have to experience that kind of a thing, but it's a real thing. But if you can learn by what people have done that affected you, then you're already one step ahead of all of it. And I did. I really learned that from my dad, and he was teaching me a lesson and didn't even know it. And I stayed at my job for over 20 years, and I created a really stable environment. All three of my kids grew up in the same house, and I'm still there. They when they say home, they mean this place, right?
Right.
They
That's
know,
very cool.
yeah, and that's I don't think I would have been that really motivated to do that if I hadn't seen what being able to look back on my life and learn from what was going on then. And as you grow older, you start seeing it. You don't see it when you're young. I mean, I get it, right? You're just moving with the punches. At some level, it becomes normal, especially like we were talking about military people. That's an expected thing. When your dad comes home and says, "I lost my job today because I didn't like what the boss said and I punched him in the mouth." That that kind of stuff is just unexpected. And what's it do? Well, the whole family dynamic changes for a short period of time. But let me tell you something. I also learned something from that man, and that's how I learned how to love people through really hard situations, because that's what really was what it was. My parents are still married. My parents didn't get married until I was 4, right? And they got married, and they're still married. No divorce. They stuck it out. And that's kind of what I'm saying, right?
We got a couple of
Go for it.
smoking comments from YT again.
Go ahead.
First, YT said, and this people pay attention because this is deep, really, really good stuff. He said, "I noticed that everyone wants you to recover, but when you do and you change and grow, it triggers them because they cannot continue to treat you the same. So it's like a shock to you and everyone around you." You know what? This is something that you hear about. It's not talked about enough, but you will hear about it in group where, they just continue to say, "Yeah, we really want you to sober grow up." And you can tell that once that really happens, they miss having you to kick around. They kind of miss that, that thing that they had over you, and it really is something that, this is a phenomenon that I think a lot of people in recovery can relate to. And then his next comment, I think, is really heavy.
It's a girl, by the way.
"Oh, I'm so sorry, YT. I'm killing it." That's great.
No, you didn't see the first comment.
Would you like to have $1 for every time I've done that, Mark? Seriously, would have paid for this camera. I'm sorry, YT. But YT then she says, my parents' drinking has caused me post-traumatic stress disorder. I can't continue to pretend anymore. I just want us to open up and keep it real with each other, apologize, forgive, and grow together. And you know something, people, that is possible. It really is, but it takes both parties. I've talked a lot about the relationship with my daughter, and I wasn't there. And, I used to really, one of my favorite things to complain about was how, they shoved me out of my daughter's life. And, they told my daughter that I didn't want to have anything to do with her, which is low budget. It really is. But it's another one of those situations where, so if I had been going to work 40 hours a week and I was coming home and I was living a stable life and I wasn't doing dope and everything else, do you think they would have shoved me out of her life? I'll never be able to answer that question, but I'll be able to ask myself that question every single time I start getting heated about the early days. The beautiful thing is, it is all out in the open. My daughter and I have been viciously honest with one another, which has really led to a great relationship.
It's hard at first, isn't it? Being that honest. It's hard at first to be able to accept each other's honesty.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Brutal. It really is. It's brutal at first. And that's another thing that you really have to lay down some rules and some guidelines. I remember having that conversation. I've talked about it many times on the lifeboat, but having that conversation with my father, where he said, there's a lot of just missing time, gray areas, unanswered questions, and things from your past that I would really like you to fill in. Now that you're sober, I'd kind of like to know, the truth about some things. And, questions like, "Hey, that time you asked for this much money because you said this was wrong," and I'd be like, "No, that was a lie. I was trying to get an ounce of dope," But before it started, I was really clear in saying, be sure that you want to do this before we do this.
Yeah.
Because when we start this thing, don't ask a question you don't want to know the answer to, because I'm gonna do this. And And I remember him once or twice asking a question and going, no, 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 you know what? Let that one go. Let that one go. I don't want to know. I changed my mind. I don't want to know. And by the end of it, we were laughing. It was, I mean, honestly, and I was telling him things, you know, I remember some of the answers were tough, you know, and some of the stuff, you know, like, were you guilty of the bank robbery? Because they didn't, you know, and I said, no, I wasn't guilty of that bank robbery. I was guilty of a lot of other bank robberies, you know, I just wasn't guilty of that one. But by the end of it, I mean, we were chuckling, and, you know, we had really sort of built something that brought us really much closer together. And I thank God every day, honestly, that all that went down, because
well, that's healing, dude. That's complete. I had to heal you guys' relationship so big, and at the same time lifted a huge weight off of your shoulders.
big time.
I think your
Big
dad
time,
was
because
actually
I
doing
think if
you
he had
he was doing
yeah,
you a
if he had gone
favor.
to the other side
Yeah.
without that knowledge, I think that would have been something that guilt would have been overwhelming. You know what I mean? I would have felt like it was a continued lie right up to the finish line. And you know, there's
that.
liberation in telling the truth. There really is.
Yeah. I bet he knew that. He was doing you a favor. I don't think it was really so much for him, it sounds like. It sounds like he knew that that was going to allow your guys' relationship to go ahead and heal up and move forward. That's what it sounded like to me anyway. I'm not no psychologist or nothing, but really, honestly, I'm sure that's how it felt, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then YT says it's super hard to be honest and open and be vulnerable because of the possibilities of insults. You know, I have been in situations, and I don't know your parents, YT, I really don't, you know, but I have been in situations in the past where I knew I was going into this kind of a situation, you know, this kind of a debate or an argument or whatever you want to call it, with people that I knew had a propensity to start slinging insults and everything else. And believe it or not, people, you can lay down guidelines on things like that if you're really trying to heal. And you know, I would say things like, "We're going to do this," but you know, the first time you call me an idiot, or the first time you call me a dirtbag, or whatever, you know, all that's off the table. I will walk out because I want to do this, and I want healing to happen and all of that. But I have forgiven myself for the things that I've done. And if you're not ready to do that, then maybe I'm not ready for this conversation. But I'm not going to take abuse from you today. So if you want to do this, we can have this, and I'm willing to open up, and I'm willing to be vulnerable and all that. But I'm telling you right now that there are rules that I have in place to protect my sobriety. You start calling me names, you start getting abusive or any of that, I'm out the door. And I may very well have oversimplified YT. I don't know your situation, but it is something that has served me well in the past.
That's really good advice, guys. Honestly, it is. I mean, you can apply that to so many situations. I mean, can you imagine if everybody was just to be that honest with each other and tell them that? Listen, if you're not ready for this conversation, let's not have it yet. When you're ready, let me know and we can.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what I mean? And if people can,
I do.
Yeah, well, obviously you do. Yeah.
Yep, it makes perfect sense. So what I mean is you're explaining it well. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. All righty, people. I hate to do it, but we have reached the top of the hour. So, but you know something? We might, look, just please come back tomorrow night, people, because the comment section is on fire. It really is. This is when the boat is at its best. When you people are interacting and doing it, you know, and the really funny thing is, you guys will leave comments and say, boy, you were great tonight. And the truth of the matter is, the shows are great when you guys are interacting the way you're doing it. You know, Mark and I are the same, we're the same idiots every night, but you guys, and I say that for people. You know,
Yeah, we're good. You know
well,
better
about
than
me,
that.
he really is.
Oh,
No, I'm
yeah.
kidding. All right, people. All right, people, you know the drill. We're going to be back tomorrow night, same bat time, same bat channel. And I'm happy as hell that this feels like the lifeboat. I really am, and I know Mark is too. All right, so let's just keep doing what we're doing, right? We're family now. All right, we will be back 23 hours from now. Between now and then, one assignment. I want you to reach out, and I want you to try to save somebody. And you know what? Protect yourself in the process, right? Your sobriety comes before anybody else's. That's the way it has to be. That's the only way it works, right? So we will see you tomorrow night, people. I am Captain Tommy Scoville, and on the other side of the glass,
Mark Wages.
And this, in high definition, is a cat in a basket. Good night, everybody. We love